baby bunny. It's a monumental day. At least for me anyway. Today we're finally going to be reassembling or attempt to reassemble our 1992 Honda CR250 engine. As I stated before in a previous video, I've never disassembled one and never reassembled one. So I'm quite anxious and quite nervous. Simply, I don't want to fuck this up. I am going to make a weak attempt at sounding more educated during the reassembly process by referring to my climber manual many times. This will make the videoing process extremely long for me, but hopefully it all works out. As far as parts and pieces go, we have our bolt kit, our seal and bearing remover and installer tool, our cylinder hone, some Scotch-Brite pads, our crank bearings and seals, our oil seal kit, seal puller, gasket maker, and our engine gasket kit. That said, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and let's see if we can make it happen. I started by cleaning the crankcase halves with solvent, and then, actually I didn't use solvent, I used like a simple green product, cheaper version because, you know, budget. Then I rewashed them in hot soapy water and then rinsed them in cold water, and then blew them off with the air compressor, holding the bearings, not making sure not to spin them. How do I know this procedure? As stated before, we are doing play-by-play right out of the manual because I have zero experience, almost no experience with the reassembly of this engine, and I don't know any tricks of the trade. So I have to refer to the manual over and over again because, again, I don't want to mess anything up. I want to do this by the book and as the best I can do so we don't have any failures. Next step is going to be bearing and seal removal. I'm not removing all the bearings. It's going to be tricky for me because I don't know the process, and while looking over some stuff, I don't know if you picked up this on the last video, but we do have aftermarket crank Pro X, and I forgot to buy the tool to remove this other crank bearing. But if you look closely, where is it here? Japan. Koyo. Oh, fancy that.
Fancy that.
What did I buy? The same exact bearing. And if, I don't know if you can hear this, but there is no noise. That bearing is still good. So that said, on that side of it, because I don't have the tool, I'm going to leave it and we're just going to reuse it. But that is going to screw up my procedure a little bit. As I've read in the manual, we're supposed to put this on a hot plate and then put the bearing in the freezer, and by process of expansion and contraction, that's how you basically put the bearing in place. So let me start by, I know I say way too much. I'm working on it. I'm just wicked flustered, to be honest with you. I've never done this before and I'm extremely nervous about it. I'm not the most confident person in the world. I wish I was. I'm going to start by removing the seals and selected bearings. I'll get you in here. I don't know whether to do it from this angle or this angle. I think up top I'll try and mount you from the ceiling. And I'll do a couple seals, and then we'll jump ahead till they're all removed and I figure out a procedure for installing one crank bearing and then the old crank bearing and we'll go from there. Okay, so of course our seal remover, that's the biggest one it comes with. In true Mike sense, I didn't look at all the ones before I ordered it, but I ordered it because it was the cheapest. I think on the old seal, we'll try and drive it out with the biggest one there. And then for the new seal, we'll have to get creative. Okay, that seal is out. I'm then going to remove this bearing over here. Should probably look it up and tell you which bearing it is. I'm going to remove the rest of the seals with either the seal remover tool or the hook style tool, and once I do that, I'll bring it back in. We have all our seals removed, very easy. So next we are going to be trying to remove the one crank bearing. So let me get that set up and we'll go from there. So we've been letting things cooking and cooling for about an hour now. After 30 minutes, I did go ahead and press out the old bearing. I did not film it. It was actually quite easy. I'm going to try and do this one hand. I did not have a big enough driver for that bearing, so I made one out of plywood quick. So let me see if I can press this new bearing in and try and make it happen. All right. Turn this off. A pot holder here. And we're just going to bring this over. And we'll grab said bearing. The manual says to note the direction of the bearing when you take it out. Our letters were facing towards us on this side of the case, so that's the way we're going to go back in. And all right, let's see if this just... After installing our crank bearing, we went ahead and installed our crank bearing seal. It wants the two lips to be packed with grease, which we did. According to the manual, the left seal should be 2 millimeters or 0.08 inches below the surface. We did go a bit beyond. I don't know how you measure that. I don't have anything to measure that. So I'm happy with it. We have the counter shaft seal to do, shift shaft, and clutch shaft seal to do. So let me get those installed. Pretty straightforward. We're just using our seal and bearing tool, and then we will move on to the other side of the case. Because we were reusing the other bearing that was still attached to the crank, I stuffed the crank piston rod and bearing in the freezer for almost 2 hours, and then cooked the engine case at 200 degrees, and this one literally just fell right back into place. So that was nice and easy. Don't know how the freezer affects the piston or any of that. We're just going to let it come back to temperature and then go from there. So I know you can't see it, but I have my crank seal installed, and then from what I recollect, last thing I took out was the transmission. So that's what I started with. I didn't film it because I was scratching my head quite a while on this one. I did want to make sure, even though it was together before, that doesn't mean it was together put together correctly. The shift forks, I don't remember moving them, but they were not in the right place. They are lettered, and the manual makes it mic proof. They tell you exactly where they go. The gears all seem to be in the correct places. We put the shift drum in. I'm not an expert on this. I don't really know exactly how everything works. I get the basic principle, but I did inspect the gears, and I don't know if you can see that, but third gear, or what I think is third gear, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you can start seeing it right there. Third gear is a little rough. And there's one tooth, I think that's, no, there it is. There's one tooth that's in real rough shape. All the other gears seem fine. I'm not sure what got into third gear or why third gear is so beat up. It's not in the budget to, or time frame or budget to source another one. We're just gonna run it. So we got that part done. I will say also that I have been lubing all the bearings and parts and so on with this Honda 8085 transmission oil as we're going back together. That said, let's continue to march, and I'm going to try and remember what the next thing is. I'm probably going to have to refer to the video because I honestly don't remember what the next thing is on this side, if anything. So let me figure that out, and I think from here on in we're just going to do, I install it, then show you what I installed. It's just so hard for me to film it while I do it because, like I said, I have zero experience and I'm referring so much to the manual and I'm just double checking and triple checking, and it's just going to be so hard to film it as I'm doing it. I wish I had done 5 of these already, but I mean, it's exciting and it's extremely stressful at the same time. As always, disclaimer for you guys who do it day in and day out and have done plenty of these, just cut me some slack, and more importantly, if you see me doing something wrong, please yell at me in the comments, say, hey idiot, you need to change this before you have catastrophic failure as you try to run this thing. Okay, let's go. Continue. As far as I can tell, we're ready to go back with our 2 engine case halves. I've cleaned and prepped the surfaces, and before I do the gasket, well, let's back up. The first gasket I needed was this O-ring, and of course, when I went to the kit to find said O-ring, it does not exist. It did not come with the kit. Secondly, as I was trying to open up the vacuum sealed kit, I don't know if you can see this, I did rip the gasket, but I repaired it overnight with some gasket maker, and I'm actually going to be using gasket maker ultra black. I'm going to skim coat both cases before I apply the gasket, because of the low points, defects, scratches, and there are many. So we're just filling in the voids essentially. I like to apply the stuff with a Q-tip. Paint's on pretty good with those, and it's not all over your hands or gloves or whatever. I'm not going to film it. I find that to be quite boring, and I would think you would too. Again, we're just going to paint on the gasket maker, let it tack up a minute, and then put our gasket on, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to put these 2 halves together. As you can see, I got my surfaces painted up, so to speak. I got this surface painted up and gasket in place. As you can see from the manual, the dowel pins are clearly on the left side case, transmission side, whatever you want to call it. And ours are on the other side of the case. I'm hoping 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because I'm not about to remove them and put them on this side. That said, let's see if we can get these 2 cases back together. So I don't have the Honda crankcase assembly tool to put these 2 halves together. There's the tool there and there. So I'm gonna let you guys have a real good laugh on this one, keeping with the theme of the crudeness around here and what we have to work with. There it is. I don't have a press either, so we're just gonna make our own press. We'll use the roof. I know it's super shady, sketchy. I got a piece of foam down there so I don't mar the case. That's a piece, the top to an adjustable jack stand. We have our Kmart 5-ton jack from God knows when. And we just figured out the angle of the roof. And yeah, I know. You don't have to put it in the comments. I know, it's bad. But if it works, is it a dumb idea? Should we watch this one? I'm, obviously super nervous. We're fairly straight. Let's just see what happens when we give this thing a pump. That moved quite a bit. According to the manual, you want to make sure your spacing is even all the way around. We got a bit of a space over here, so we're just going to take our rubber mallet and just give a tap. You can see there that moved. Spacing looks good. That looks good. Our dowel's going into position. Still spin our transmission. Can still spin our crank. Guys, I can't tell you how incredibly nervous I am about doing this for the first time.
That poor man is a nervous wreck.
All right, let's try another pump. Or two. And that almost went all the way. The manual says you can use a press in lieu of the Honda tool. Obviously that side's almost, let's see if we can. And same here, we're almost all the way down. Well, it's actually working. I might as well finish the job, right? And I would say that is it. Down all the way there. You can tell me what that notch is for right there on the bottom of the engine. I'd appreciate it. I should just look it up, and I probably will. Got a little gap here. That's it, we're there. As you can see, we're good. See if our transmission still spins. It does. See if our crank still moves. It does. All right, I'm gonna say we're back together. Let's get this Dr. Seuss-like contraption off, and then we'll start bolting this thing back together, and I'll look up torque spec. I did find something interesting as I'm trying to install these crankcase bolts. I found torque spec, looks like 10 newton meters on all case bolts for the most part. If you agree, let me know. So I'll put my bolts in, and I think I was short one, but as you can see, there's no diagram. The bolts are just out of it, but the spacing is all the same. I get the same amount of threads that need to screw in. So I like the one there, but when I put this one in here, as you can see, I got a ton of extra space. And then when I came over here, well, it doesn't work there either. I thought I was missing a bolt, so I just been pulling my hair out. I start pulling out my hair. Going, what is happening? Going through all my bolts. Of course, this whole process, this build, has spanned over months, and the two brain cells aren't always working in unison, and I couldn't figure it out until I looked at the old case cover. First off, let's look at the number here. Focus. MEO3E. Of course, I don't know what the bottom represents, serial number or what, but that MEO3E, you come to the old case cover, same thing, MEO3E. Bought it off, we bought this case off eBay. They said it was off of 92, but here's the big difference. So this bolt here, can you see the height, space, if I put my fingers between there and there? Now let's go to the old cover. That same bolt hole. Look at that. This is dropped way down, machined way down. So yeah, very interesting. If you've run into this before, let me know. Does it mean anything for our mismatched cases? Remember earlier in one of the videos I said, yeah, you're supposed to buy, you know, both engine halves, both right and side engine cases, because they're not going to mate up correctly. So now I'm super nervous. I'm going to go have to chase a 3-inch bolt for here, and I don't remember what's going on here. Everything looks the same here. You flip the cover over. Everything looks the same as the other cover. The only thing difference is the way this was machined, milled, however you want to call it. Super interesting, but also super stressful because I don't know, never having done this before. I'm not sure why that is. I'm assuming this is probably a different year. I don't even know what that top number means, but it's the same on both. Let's look at the bottom number, 550-3503. This is a 540-017-9er, maybe. Anyways, if you've seen that, I'm assuming they're just different years. Everything else seems to line up, but now I'm extremely nervous about the whole situation. So I'm going to source some bolts. I don't know about this one. I don't know why I don't have the one for in here. Again, everything looks the same, so I don't know. I'll try and get it figured out and we'll bring it back in. So we have all the case bolts tightened to 10 Newton meters, torqued rather, and my two brain cells are definitely not working in unison. Given the bolt length discrepancy, given the two case covers, I decided to go to the hardware store and see what they had. Well, M61, they only went up to, I think, 40 millimeters. We needed much longer. But that was a wasted trip for two reasons. Because, and I believe I mentioned it in the beginning of the video, all right, we have a bolt kit. Idiot. I thought it only had the body bolt kit for just like all the plastics and such, but it turns out I must have got the good one because I have all sorts of everything bolt kit, and so yeah, it saved me. But never ceases to amaze me, my stupidity. Anyways, now that we're past that, while we're on this side, I don't see any reason why we can't install our stator, flywheel, and clutch lever. I have the clutch lever all greased, ready to go in. Like I said before, it's mic proof. There's marks somewhere. I forget where. Is that it up there? I don't know. There's marks somewhere to make it mic proof in the case to exactly where it goes. So I'm not going to film it. It's very straightforward. Maybe I'll install the stator and show you the marks, and then we'll do the flywheel and figure out torque spec. We have our clutch lever, our flywheel key, and our stator end. And if you can see right there with that line, there is a raised notch. We just lined those up, completely mic proof, and we have that installed. Next is the flywheel itself, and we'll look up torque spec. Flywheel is installed and torqued to 55 Newton meters. Moving on to the other side, we're going to start with this crankcase crank collar. It says to grease and installed hollow side in. I'm assuming that first, and seated against the bearing. Straightforward, easy done, and we'll go from there. Next, we're going to be installing the primary gear drive shoulder side in to here, bolt it, and torque it. Primary gear torque to 45 Newton meters. I think next, I don't know the order of things, but it looks like the external shift drive mechanism. I'm going to attempt to reassemble that. I'm not going to film it for obvious reasons. It is going to be a head scratcher for me. Never done it. Don't know the order of it. I'm referring to our manual as always, and I'll bring it back in when we got it together. In process doing this shift mechanism, and let's just talk about this stopper lever and shift drum center, I believe they call it. The center bolt requires thread lock. So on the other side of that shift drum there is a groove for the dowel that's in the shift drum itself, and the dowel only sticks out like between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch, and trying to bolt that down with Loctite, and there's already Loctite still on the threads from factory or from someone taking it apart, trying to hold that shift drum down and tighten it while trying to keep the dowel aligned fought me for 25 minutes. At one point I thought I had the dowel located, and I tried to tighten it, and it got all wonky and it locked something up in the transmission, and I had to throw the front sprocket on and undo it. But let me know your experience with that. That fought me hard. I actually ended up, they wanted you to put the shift stopper in first, then the drum. I ended up putting the drum in first, then the shift stopper. But yeah, that was not fun, trying to hold that drum while you torque that bolt down, because it wants to jump out of the dowel pin essentially. Anywho's, continuing on. Okay, we have our shift mechanism system, assembly, whatever you want to call it, installed. That bearing there was up a bit, which made me nervous, trying to put that pivot bracket on, but the bearing went right back in, so not a big deal. Seems to be doing the thing. All right, moving forward. We have kickstart assembly back in with the idler gear. It's a bit tricky, but I think I got it. I think it's correct. We also got our exhaust valve, governor, and rack installed. Very straightforward. Basically stick it in the hole along with the linkage there. It's directional. It needs to end up in that position. Next is going to be the clutch assembly. So, if you recall, our old clutch basket was, let's see if I can see it here. You know, we had that broken piece there, and so I ordered a used one. Shout out to Matt for sending me this, because I thought I just, according to the description on eBay, it's hard to do with one hand here. It was just the basket. Well, Matt on eBay sent me the whole damn assembly. Bearing springs, cover, clutch plates, everything. So I thought that was really cool. Anyway, let's get this sorted out and get the clutch on. I'm gonna go from this to finished. Most of you guys know how to do this. It's the basket, and then you start with a fiber disc. Should end up with a fiber disc, if I remember right. We'll load all the torques and bring you back in when it's done. So we've hit a major.
That's bullshit. That's major bullshit.
Road bump in our assembly here. And unfortunately, with doing things for the first time, you're going to make mistakes, but this one's pretty bad, and I guess it could have been avoided, but unfortunately it wasn't. I was actually getting ready to go back with the clutch assembly, and I was over here looking at stuff, and I noticed that. Yep, I noticed that. And my two brain cells lit up like a Christmas tree, and that is probably a thrust washer. And in the previous video, if you remember me saying, hey, be mindful of the washers, when you see me split these cases for the first time, you'll notice that washers, I'll put it in the video, falls out, and I go, oh, that goes about there. I guess the biggest thing is mind the thrust washers that tend to stick inside. Here comes the case. The bad half. Oh, there's stuff going on already. Perfect. And that goes here. Case is split back apart. Obviously came back a lot quicker than going back together after already doing it. We figured out the problem. It's where our washer went. It goes on our counter shaft right there. So when we pulled this cover off, we flipped it. I'll just show you quick. As I, eat my own words, this was stuck to that, and when I flipped the cover, it did exactly that. And when I went back together, completely forgot it. So I don't have words for it. It is what it is. What it is.
It is what it is.
Hard lesson learned. Our gasket is now junk, so now I not only have the daunting task of scraping both sides of all the goo off, I now have to get another gasket and start over. I guess on the positive note, live and learn. These kinds of mistakes teach you a lot, and it actually will go back a lot quicker than the first time. So, as they say, practice makes perfect. We'll go take some deep breaths, call it a day, and hit it again as soon as we get this gasket. We have our case halves cleaned up once again, as you can see here. I used a razor blade. Be careful with that razor blade. This metal's soft. It'll dig in. You kind of have to have the right angle. As you know, this aluminum magnesium alloy, i.e. mixture of metals, is softer than the razor blade. So just be careful with that. Then I used a Scotch-Brite non-scratch pad, and then I used the air gun, blew everything out. And then what I like to do is I like to take some carb cleaner, choke cleaner, and just douse the Q-tip. Q-tip, one of my favorite inventions of all time, and then I just clean the case with the said Q-tip and carb cleaner to remove any grease, oil, grime, etc. I think it works pretty good. That said, we don't need to see the whole process again, so we're just going to fast forward it. I think we were at the clutch when, the shit show happened, and my two brain cells obviously weren't working in unison, so here we go. That was bad. Better. Back where we should be. So I started to install the clutch assembly. Very straightforward. The manual makes it mic-proof. It's just like baking brownies. It does, there's tricks of the trade. There's tricks to everything. So this was the better out of the two lock washers. It wants you to line the tabs up, tab, with the notches in the inner basket, and like so. Not sure why, but I'm sure it's to get under, for prying around the nut. It locks the nut in place. Easy peasy. So let me get this assembled and we'll bring it back in for next step. I don't have the clutch center holding tool, so this is what I came up with. Because we had extra plates, because it was nice of Matt to send everything with the used clutch basket, I just went across the street and had some scrap steel, and these bushings, I believe, are from a wall mount TV kit, and just some hardware. So yeah, I just cut that up, and I'm going to put you down for a minute and see if that fits in there. It does sneak in there. The bushings just barely squeak by the center, but we're in, and we're now ready to torque our center nut to, what does that say? I can't read. I can't see nothing. Let me see if we can read it on here. Does it say 82? 60.5 foot-pounds, or is it 62 or 82? I think it was 82. Anyways, 62.5 foot-pounds. Now we have a tool to hold this and tighten our nut. So let's continue. The homemade tool worked really well. We have our tabs, locking tabs, bend up into place. and we'll finish the assembly. According to the manual for 92 and 93 models, we have a 92. There should be a tab on one of the friction discs. Neither set of, like that one there, so you're supposed to line all the tabs up on the friction discs rather. Neither set has tabs in it. I don't know if that's just a 1992 factory thing. Let me know what you think, if you know the answer to that. One thing I did want to mention throughout this build is there's all sorts of service limits and measurements and clearances. We're obviously on this one not doing any of that. We should, yes, but on this one we're not. We're just basically, you know, baking brownies, following directions, putting them back together, and we're going to see what happens. I'm sure if we started measuring stuff and, you know, feeler gauge and, you know, vernier calipers, we'd come to find out that we have a lot more wear, tear, and stuff that needs to be replaced. So we're just gonna turn a blind eye and again just put the thing together. So yeah, I thought that was interesting enough to show it. I'm assuming that's just a factory thing. So let's continue the assembly. I also wanted to show you the clutch rod. See if we can get this to focus. Come on, camera. Come on. I'll put it down on the table, see if we'll do it. So there's the one that came out of the bike. You can clearly see the wear on that one. And then these are the two that we got off of eBay. Ordered one, didn't know I was getting another one, so I've chosen this one. Has the least amount of wear. We put grease on both ends and just put it in through the main shaft in place. So here's a great example why you double check, triple check, quadruple check, excuse me, is I misread my torques on these spring bolts. I thought it was 27 Newton meters. It's actually only 10 because I was trying to go fast and looked at a different spec, and you know what happened. I broke a bolt. Luckily, it was loose enough where just trying to drill it out, it just spun itself right out. So we got very lucky on this one. I do have a spare center, but this one was in much better shape, or a spare cover rather, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, another disaster averted, and just wanted to show you guys that I make tons of mistakes, but always double, triple, quadruple check everything, because this was a perfect example of what can happen if you don't. So while reinstalling our exhaust valve governor and rack, I did notice it wants to lubricate with some molybdenum disulfide oil, which is a 50-50 mixture of engine oil and grease. I don't have that. I'm gonna be honest, no idea what that is. I haven't looked it up, so if you know what it is, why it's special, why it just goes on, you know, the exhaust governor, not every gear in this motor, let me know. I just, you know, I have some high temp synthetic wheel bearing grease and Honda oil, so that's what I did. I just greased pretty much everything with grease and oil and rack, and again, it has to be in that position. And that's all back together. Clutch spring bolts are much better at 10 Newton meters versus 27. Ha ha ha. This Kickstarter spring, how do you get that to stay in place? I mean, it goes in the hole right there, but it immediately wants to jump out. So if I did something wrong, I'm just going to leave it like that because it'll just keep popping out. I believe I have it installed correctly, but if I don't, yell at me. There is one part that I am waiting on, and it was one I was pretty adamant about replacing, and that is our water pump shaft gear assembly. As you can see here, it has massive wear on it. The gear itself is cracked pretty badly on both sides, and I just thought out of all the parts I've seen so far, this was by far the worst. It is plastic. I know that third gear was pretty bad, but I think we can live with that. This was one I just didn't want to reinstall. It is on order, should be here in a couple days. So that's kind of what's holding us up now. I suppose we can do the cylinder, head and, cylinder or whatnot. Let me contemplate that, and we'll go from there. Well, you're not going to believe this, but I just got a message from my phone from eBay, and look what just showed up. Water pump gear, shaft gear, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, it's here. That's good. So we can continue to march on the water pump. I am leery because I do think I'm missing one washer. Of course, it's not going to focus. That's fine. It appears to be copper. I don't know if both sides are copper. I'm assuming so, but I hate to assume.
Well, you know what they say about assuming.
So, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a washer on either end. Don't have one. Gonna have to locate one. Can I use steel? Aluminum? It has to be copper. I don't know. I have to research that. Let me get this package open and we'll compare the two and go from there. Obviously, big difference from new to old. Massive wear on the shaft there, new there. Cracked, not cracked. It did not come with washers, which I'm pretty bummed about, so I will have to double check if I do need a second washer and source one. In the meantime, since I changed the rest of the engine out, we are going to go ahead and hone our cylinder. Never done it before, so probably not going to film it. I'll have to watch a video. I've seen videos done. RPM and how fast you go up and down, blah 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 blah. As far as what we're going to coat it with, according to the internet, you know how that goes. Everything from window cleaner to a kerosene mixture to honing solution. I do have honing solution in stock. It seems like majority of people online and on YouTube are using WD-40. Maybe we'll mix both. I don't know. We'll then clean it with some brake clean, carb clean, and then soap and water, and go from there. We got our cylinder honed and cleaned up. Let's see if we can see. Oh, let's get you some light that we can use. All right, tough to do this with. I need 5 more hands is all. Can you see the? I don't know. Tough to see, but we do got our crosshatch in there. Can kind of see it there, and I know we have. There's a better view. Some crosshatch there. We have a huge scratch in the cylinder, which we're obviously not going to get rid of. And I know most of you are saying the cylinder is probably junk at this point, but the bike did physically run and drive. And I don't know if you've seen the price of a used cylinder, and I don't have the money to bore it out, anything, buy new piston and rings. You saw the piston. The piston's in really good shape. Someone's been in here replacing parts, so we're just gonna, run what you brung. That's what we're gonna do. So cylinder's cleaned and ready to go. And not sure if we should take apart this exhaust valve and just inspect it. We'll probably just ignore that and keep pressing on here. So we are short a water pump washer, and I keep forgetting about this kit I bought. I bought it mainly for all the body bolts because all the bolts were, if you watched the video when I talked about it, every bolt was mismatched, broken, stripped. So mainly we bought this kit for body stuff, but I must have bought the good kit because it comes with everything, including water pump. And if you see there are 2 water pump washers, so I'm ecstatic. This kit, I think this Pro Pack kit was $99, $100, and so far it has bailed me out several times, and it was well worth the money. That said, we changed our oil and water seal. I'm mentioning because it's very important to pay attention to the direction of the water and or oil seal. If you put it's directional. If you screw it up, you're gonna end up with leaks. Let's keep moving. So we have our water pump put together. Those 2 washers, unfortunately, were not for the water pump. I thought they were copper. I did source one here, and I had the original one for the impeller on the outside. We also installed a new oil seal for our kickstart shaft. So yeah, things are looking good. Gonna continue to march. I want to know too, like as I asked about this kickstart spring, why it keeps jumping out, I did align, there's marks on the shaft, and behind there is the, sorry about the glare, see if I can not get glare. Anyway, I did line the two dots up with the gear and the shaft, if you're curious. But yeah, I guess next is the cover here. We got our gasket maker painted onto our case, and what I like to do is just take a Q-tip and clean the inside and outside where the case is, just so when you press together you don't get a big glop of goop out the back. I mean, we're just putting thin coat on here, but like I said before in previous videos, I'm pretty particular and I like to just clean everything up. Clutch covers and water pump cover are all installed. Water pump cover was 12 Newton meters. Both clutch covers were 10. Starting to look like a motor. So I'm getting ready to install in the cylinder head, and I just wanted to double check on things. Just because they're already done doesn't mean they're done right. The piston rings are mic proof. Let me see if I can get it there. You can actually see where the piston rings are supposed to line up right there. So that's fine. The clips, however, the wrist pin clips, so if we go to the manual, it says to turn the clip so it's open end does not align with the piston slot. I'm assuming those two are the piston slots. I'm not sure what that is. Again, I don't do this all the time. I think it has something to do with thermal blah science and whatnot, heat, temperature, but I don't know. I'm just not experienced enough. But you can clearly see in this photo that the open end is at 12 o'clock. And you can clearly see, well, I don't know if you can see it on the camera so much. Anyways, its open end is down here at that slot. So, and the other side is actually clocked at 12 o'clock. So I'm inclined to move, I'm gonna say that C-clip, I wish I could get a better shot. There it is, see it there? That's way down there. So I'm inclined to move that to the 12 o'clock position. Shoot me a comment if you agree, disagree, or other. So our exhaust valve wasn't doing exhaust valve things. It was not turning freely, so I didn't want to mess with it, but unfortunately I got to do the right thing and take it apart, clean it all up. I'm not going to measure clearances and service limits. We're just going to clean it up. It wants that fancy 50-50 grease. I'm just going to oil and grease it like we've been doing, and let me know if that's okay. I mean, it did not want to come apart. Of course, it's not going to focus for me, but it's corroded. A ton of, exhaust buildup, coke, whatever you want to call it. So let me get this cleaned up, back together, see if I can get it in working order, and we'll go from there. So we got our exhaust valve all back together, and you see it's doing the thing. It wouldn't even move before. It was severely, I want to say coked up. The exhaust byproducts, it was just layers of black. So, let's see if you can see the flapper valve doing the thing. Nice and smooth. Again, some of it wanted two-stroke oil, some of it wanted that fancy 50-50 grease, some of it wanted this, that. We just did some motor oil and grease, and believe me, there was any kind of anything on any said part, so it's definitely an improvement. That said, we'll get this cover put on, and the other doohickey cover that goes on the other side of it, and then we're going to prep our cylinder surfaces and attempt to install the cylinder. So we have our cylinder in place. It went really smooth. What am I trying to say? We lubed the piston skirt and cylinder with two-stroke oil, and yeah, it's doing the thing. So that's good. So we got our base nuts on. We used the new ones. It just looks a little snazzier. I don't have the fancy tool, but what I do have is a however many point this is, 12 point, I'm guessing 12 point, that goes socket that will go into the wrench. And torque, it calls for 40 Newton meters, and you're supposed to, if you have the fancy tool is supposed to tell you, you know, what to compensate for. I just boosted it to 42, so we're just going to do 42 Newton meters on these base flange nuts. Then we'll get the head flange nuts on, torque those down in sequence, and we're going to be real close to calling this a complete motor. Our 1992 Honda CR250 engine is finally back together. So we ended up doing the head, tighten the flange nuts to, I believe it was 27 Newton meters in sequence. I did notice, if you focus, see those two front studs, see how they're higher than the rest? I noticed they were out a bit, not sure why. I was like, should I sink them a bit? There was plenty of threads, I just ran them. Let me know why you think those were up. If you know the reason, and if I should have, you know, sunk them in a little bit. We checked our revalves. They weren't cupped, cracked, no light coming through, so we threw those in. And yeah, I don't know if I'd say happy for doing it. I know a lot of you guys who do this every day are saying big deal. For me, it was a very big deal. And you're probably saying, well, you were a mechanic for 5 years. And yeah, so what? It was 5 years. I was never ASE certified, never went to school for it. I was a good R&R guy, maybe I forget if it was ABC, maybe a C or a B. I, you know, did a lot of diagnostics. But my point is, a 1965 Chevy small block 350 is not the same as a 2023 Jaguar XK, whatever. They're just two totally different animals, even though, you know, a motor is a motor is a motor. If you have never had your hands on it, you know, they're just different animals. This CR250 motor is no different. It's not the same as a car or a truck. It's the same basic principles, but it's not the same animal as far as tear down and bringing it back. For those of you who have never tried this, don't be afraid. Go out, go on eBay. I think I bought this thing used for $14, and familiarize yourself with it. It's set up great, and it's just like baking brownies. Step one, do this. And that's all anything is. It's just tricks of the trade, right? Whether it's carpentry, mechanics, anything. It's just learning those tricks in sequence, you know. There's steps for a reason, and you know, a lot of, you know, when I put this thing together, you see how it was designed, and I'm in awe of it. Think of the guy who came up with the shifting system and the shift drum and the linkage and the gears, and that it's so cool and it's so mechanical, but someone thought of that, and just guy or a bunch of guys sitting down one day and saying, hey, how do we make this work? And to come up with that design. And of course, over the years, you see other designs and you get better ideas based on those older designs, but still, looking at stuff like this, it's mechanical marvel to me that someone actually pulled this out of their ass and said, yeah, let's try it. And of course, they had to revamp it 1,000 times to make it work, but in my mind, it's still very cool. And that's why I like the mechanical side of stuff. It's just so interesting to see the innovations, and just, you know, humans made this. And yeah, they fail, but it is what it is. We did go ahead and, let me see if I get a shot on this side, put the ignition cover on just loosely. Obviously, we got to run the clutch cable, but yeah, there it is all together. And I finished late yesterday, and I was laying in bed contemplating all my life's decisions, and I said, well, you haven't even passed the first test yet. You never even kicked it over. So this morning at like 4 a.m. I came down and threw the Kickstarter on it. I'll see if I can do it one hand here. It's got quite a, well, arm-wise it feels like it has a lot of compression. Like I'm moving the motor. But yeah, it does the Kickstarter returns. It does kickstart things. We got compression, which is good. Let me get a shot in there. So yeah, that's test one has been confirmed. It does kick over. The kickstart is doing the kick thing. We do have compression. It is turning over freely. And so yeah, that puts my mind at ease. Unfortunately, we still got a long ways to go. So if you saw anything during my process that immediately sends red flags, please let me know in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it before we actually try and start this thing. Super nervous, super excited to get to that point, but like I said, we still got parts and pieces everywhere. But we're getting there, slow but sure. You know, what is it? Slow and steady wins the race. So yeah, I'm going to end the video there. I appreciate you guys watching. And if you could, you know, hit all the buttons that help me out, I greatly appreciate it. I think analytics now, it's more about how many videos you watch, and if you watch the entire video. I try to keep up with that stuff, but it's just, I'm so busy that it's tough. I finally got my first comment, so shout out to Brandon who commented on the last truck video. If you haven't seen the 1996 Dodge Dam 2500, please go check it out. And let's continue to march. Stay tuned, we have a little added bonus at the end here. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. But more importantly, I'd love to hear from you. So as an added bonus, I thought I'd clean this old cover up and just kind of go over it a bit. So I don't know if you've seen the other videos, but I kind of went over this. So I didn't see this when I bought it, but this was broken, but they had this, and I believe I found a piece of it. It's not like JB Weld. It was almost like hardened Play-Doh. It's like someone formed it in their hand and formed it around this, and it was just a big hunk sitting over where the swing arm bolt, engine mount, you know what I'm trying to say. It was crazy. And you can see it actually, the crack comes down here. But then, this is the part I did see, and it was in better shape. You know, obviously it threw the chain, but then when I started playing with it, yep, that left the building. But I thought it'd be interesting just to try and chip some of this, I'm assuming JB Weld or putty. This darker stuff definitely looks like the stuff that was over here, and you can actually see fingerprints. We could actually, you know, send those prints in and figure out who did this. But you see under here, there's also another layer that looks like, you know, the classic JB Weld. And somewhere else there's actually, there's actually a TIG weld here. That looks actually really good. It's just, I thought I saw a crack, no, it's just beat up. It's just crazy after, I'm assuming this is the original case after, what is it, 31 years, what this poor case has gone through. So we're just going to chip away at these multiple layers and see what actually lives underneath. I thought it'd be kind of neat. So let me try and get you in here, and we'll peel the layers back and see how bad it really is. All right, let's see what's under door number one if we can. I just got this junk chisel and a hammer, and see what we see. Stuff's flying. Oh, there's a good chunk. Look at that. Nice. Another layer under that chunk. I don't know if you can see it. So there was another layer under that big piece. Let's go for this light colored stuff. There we go. Stuff is flying. That was a good piece. meow. Oh, I think I see a crack over here. Can you see that where my finger is? Let's try and get that. Maybe a nail set? Yeah. Anywho, let me see if I can get you in here. So obviously a massive crack up here. That piece was broken off. That was broken off. Thought we'd see a lot more carnage, a lot bigger crack or chunk missing, but anyways, not as interesting as I thought, but it was kind of fun. This case is ready for the bin. Over and out.
So, folks,